Good morning. There's something very, very serious going on in Ukraine at the moment, which is not being told to you in the manner which is true by the Western mainstream media. As always, they never tell you the truth. They either lie or they deceive you or they twist things to make them into the opposite of what is actually happening. Now, the overall situation in Ukraine, it hasn't really changed much over the last month. The Russian forces are slowly advancing through the Donbass, but they're up against the most heavily fortified line in the world of Ukrainian National Socialists and others, conscripts and so on, supported by NATO countries that have been arming them for 8 years to build a defense line or an attack line around Donetsk city in the Donbass area and up to the north towards the border with Russia. And from there, they've been shelling and maiming and killing Russians in the independent states in the Donbass for 8 years. But Russia, the Russian army, with the Donetsk and Luhansk people's armies are fighting against that very strong resistance line, breaking through in some points, and eventually that line is going to collapse and the Russians will take over the rest of the Donbass area. But what I want to talk about more is what's happening in a different part of Ukraine, which you might have heard of, which is Zaporozhye. And Zaporozhye has Ukraine's biggest nuclear power station. In fact, it's the biggest nuclear power station in the whole of Europe. It has 6 reactors, so it provides a big proportion of Ukraine's electricity. And what we're being told by the Western media is the Russians are shelling it and are trying to cause a nuclear disaster. Well, this is a complete lie and a calumny. What's happened is that before the conflict, that power station provided electricity to the whole of the Ukraine. But since the Russians took it over in April, they've rewired it so it just provides electricity to the Russian occupied parts of Ukraine, so the Crimea, the south, and the Donetsk and the Donbass area. So the Russians control it and they get electricity from it. So it doesn't make any sense at all for the Russians to be trying to destroy that nuclear power station when they've rewired it to provide electricity for the ethnic Russians in the areas that they control. So what the West is telling you that Russia is shelling it is a complete lie. The people who are actually shelling it are the Ukrainian army, the National Socialists and others who are across the river Dnieper in a smaller town across there. It's about 18 kilometers away, and they are shelling it. And the reason that that's happening is because they know they've lost. They haven't actually lost yet. The battles are still going on, but the Donbass will all fall. That's inevitable. Since June, there hasn't been much more military support coming from Western nations, NATO nations. I think Biden's just agreed another 800 million or so, but that's very small compared to the 30 billion that he provided before. There hasn't been anything else coming from Germany or the UK even for a couple of months, and people are now questioning Zelensky for being corrupt. Well, I could have told you that back in February. I think a lot of people did, and said this war or conflict should never have happened. We should have sat round the table beforehand with Russia and stuck to the Minsk agreements and not tried to bring Ukraine into NATO and continue arming the very, very nasty thuggish groups that are in there, who carry certain symbols on their flags and tattoo them on their bodies and so on. We've all seen those kind of pictures. But what's happening now is because the defeat of the Ukrainian forces is inevitable. It will happen, whether it's a month or 2 months. The Russians are taking their time, going village by village, town by town, road by road, taking over the Donbass, softening up the Ukrainian lines and so on, moving forward slowly but surely. What's happening is that they're now desperately just lashing out in any way that they possibly can, shelling this nuclear power station, and then trying to blame it on the Russians if there's an accident. The thing is, this is absolutely insane. Now, I know there's been other little pinprick attacks that we've heard of. There was a sabotage in an airfield in Crimea. Yesterday, there was a car bomb in Moscow that blew up the daughter of one of Putin's aides. Terrible that a young woman's lost her life there in Moscow because of that. But this more serious attack by shelling a nuclear power station and then trying to blame it on the other side is absolute insanity. Because if there is an accident there, then it will be a nuclear accident and the fallout will go all over Europe. It will be worse than Chernobyl. So what I would say to the Western leaders, Boris Johnson and Joe Biden and Macron and Scholz and all the others who are supporting Zelensky militarily and politically, call off this stupid, insane attack on Zaporozhye nuclear power station. I mean, whatever you think, whatever you say about the other situations in Ukraine, whatever, supporting someone who is shelling a nuclear power station makes you culpable for the radiation fallout and the destruction that will happen, the environmental destruction that will happen to perhaps dozens of countries if there is an accident there. It's absolutely mad to support this action and then to support the propaganda that says, oh, it's Russia did it. That's why they're doing it. They're letting it happen. It's almost like they want an accident to happen. They want a disaster to happen because then they can blame it on the Russians and then say Putin did it when he didn't. He wouldn't do it because it's now supplying electricity to the Russian side. So there's no reason whatsoever that the Russians would want to destroy it. They want to protect it and keep it supplying Crimea and the Donbass with electricity. So, goodness me, I mean, this is just absolute insanity from Zelensky, from the military units there, and from the Western nations, and from the mainstream media who is spinning this kind of propaganda, which is an absolute lie. And for once, this is not just a lie, this is a very, very dangerous lie. To try to stoke up a propaganda, to blame something on the other side. I mean, so, yeah, okay, if you want to do that with a building or something, you know, it's you know, just a block of flats or something, you know, make the propaganda, we can see through it. It doesn't have any long-term consequences. But if you're doing this just to make a propaganda narrative out of a nuclear accident, you've got to be either evil or insane, and probably both. So stop it, for goodness sake.